The first one's called The Raven, which is this one. And it is a middle grade fantasy series which mixes historical facts about Poe with a little twist of urban fantasy. The idea kind of came to me randomly, actually, one day, and I was just thinking, what if Poe's works like hid really interesting little tidbits or something? Maybe there was little secrets in there. And I started doing some research on this, and that's when I came to realize that the his novel, the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, kind of happened like decades later after he wrote it, with someone actually, the shipwreck actually occurring and someone with the same name being cannibalized and all this. So the bottom line was, I was like, okay, this really happened. So maybe I have something here that's actually, viable and interesting. So I kind of ran with that.
Plant Murder, Poe versus the Ugni Blanc Grape, is about exploring the mystery of those missing 5 days, so that those people who, I think there's a lot of fans of Poe, there's a lot of people who know The Raven and his work, but aren't actually familiar much with his biography or familiar with that key 5 missing days and his last moments. And so I felt important to kind of peel the onion and actually follow all of those trails in our, immersive sound podcast, to really kind of explore each one, to kind of look down the road of, was it rabies? Was it, alcohol? Was it cooping? Was it any of those things? Ultimately, the episode was about the relationship between him and what I thought was going to be whether or not he was an alcoholic, and wine and other spirits led to his death. But what it became was this amazing exploration of his life and his family. And then
Poe and I is loosely based on my time living with Edgar. When I was in the job, I always imagined, this would be a great novel, but I didn't have the skill to write it. So, but it is my alter ego, Jonah Peabody, takes the job as caretaker. That's where the similarities begin and end. That's it. So yes, it's told in alternating chapters, past and present. Jonah is a highly unreliable narrator. So as the chapters build from past to present, more of the story is revealed.
The main character is a descendant of Edgar Allan Poe, and there's a family curse that takes the form of his stories. So she has to recognize them unfolding in time to prevent them. The books do go in a particular order, each continuing after the next, and Haunted Souls is book 4. I tell people that this is the one exception to the in order rule, that you could treat this as an out of order introduction to the series, because there's background information from books 1 through 3 that might be missed, but Haunted Souls is unique in that it has a self-contained story arc within it. The Edgar Allan Poe story that I'm bringing to life in Haunted Souls is the fall of the House of Usher.
Hello, my name's Stephen Smith. I'm the producer, director, and performer of One Man Poe. Well, so I suppose I have to really start at the beginning when I first got into acting, or I wouldn't even call it acting when I was such a young kid. It was more like pretending, throwing on makeup and dressing up as monsters and anything horrific, really, because I got into acting because of old horror films from the 1930s, 40s, even the silent movie stuff. There was this actor called Lon Chaney, who was the man of 1,000 faces, they called him. And that title alone must have pricked up my ears when I was a little kid. So I became fascinated with monsters because they'd use the same actor to play all these different monsters. And some of those old films that I used to love were based on Edgar Allan Poe Gothic horror stories, namely The Black Cat and the Raven, 1934 and 1935. And I used to love those films. And then when I got a bit older, I watched all the Roger Corman stuff with Vincent Price and loved them as well. But then it actually only really took the pandemic for me to go back to Poe's original stories and realize how different they were to the films that I loved. And I thought I loved Edgar Allan Poe when I was a kid, but I was so wrong by that because I actually didn't know his original stories like I thought I did because of the films. They were so different. So in the pandemic, I did an online show of The Telltale Heart. A few months later, because that went so well, I did an online show of The Black Cat, which was a one-shot digital theatre show around a church in London where I live. And The Black Cat, again, went so well, won us a few awards and stuff, including the Saturday Visitor Award, because I came over the next year, it must have been October 2022, that I came over and was nominated for the Best Adaptation category and won it. So that was the first time I got over to Poe Fest, October 2022. But in October 2021, I created One Man Poe, which was, after learning The Telltale Heart and The Black Cat, I thought, well, I know 2 Edgar Allan Poe stories verbatim. Why not learn another 3rd and a 4th, The Pit and the Pendulum and The Raven? And so One Man Poe was created in 2021, Halloween time, which was a live rendition in front of an audience for Edgar Allan Poe stories, back to back, performed by me. And it really honored, it was a show for the first time ever in my life that really honored my inner child, in the sense that this is exactly the reason why I got into pretending in the first place. Horror, classical literature, and changing my appearance from monster to monster, like Lon Chaney did. I might not be the man of 1,000 faces, but in One Man Poe, I'm the man of 4 faces. And so this is why I do what I do, and why I think ever since coming to Poe Festival and touring it around the UK and other countries, and doing the Edinburgh Fringe with One Man Poe, it's just snowballed over the years to a really now commercial success, because Edinburgh Fringe 2025 went so well for me. We sold nearly all of our tickets, over 1,100 tickets in the space of 21 shows, and we won the award for best overall show of the Edinburgh Fringe from the Derek Awards, which and they judged over 3,200 shows this year. So I still can't quite believe it that they picked One Man Poe as the best overall show, but they did. And I think the reason why they did, and why audience respond well to it, is 2 reasons. One, I've been over, that it honors my inner child, what makes me tick as an artist. And B, it honors Edgar Allan Poe to the extent that even I think Edgar Allan Poe would like to watch One Man Poe, because it's his words but live. I've memorized 13,000 words of original Poe texts, and I perform what he wrote down but live, like a live audio book. So it's so good for students as well. I particularly love performing the show to students and people who are studying Edgar Allan Poe's stories in class. And it's kind of like Shakespeare in a way, because when you study Shakespeare in class, you can only really get it so much, but you have to see Shakespeare live and to really see it and get it. And I think the same is with Edgar Allan Poe, particularly these 4 stories, because I feel like he really honors in his writing his actor parents, and so much of his work is very performative. Even though he's not a playwright, he certainly wrote for actors, and this has been demonstrated over the years. Even before the turn of the 20th century, there was a big actors memorial dedicated to him from the actors of New York, which is, the memorial itself currently is in the Poe Museum in Richmond, Virginia. But it's one of my favorite pieces there, because it really shows what I've always felt, which these stories are meant to be performed. Just no one, as far as I'm aware, is as crazy as me to memorize them like I have. There's certainly, yes, memorizing it is one thing, but it's also saying it like you mean it, saying it like it's almost the first time the character is thinking all of these thoughts as well. And obviously I've done this show hundreds of times before, so that's always the challenge, to try and make it all fresh. But I think it's such a testament to the writing. I can pat myself on the. I can definitely pat myself on the back for acting it in such a captivating way. But I really do think that the writing is the reason why everyone's just so drawn in to the show, because it's they're timeless stories, and I think in answer to your question, how I kind of know it's working, it really depends on the kind of venue I'm in. I suppose the short answer is that I've done the show in such a wide variety of venues before. I've done art galleries, I've done libraries, I've done people's kitchens in their home, I've done drawing rooms.
With skydivers looking around here.
I hope you're ready for them. We give you the soliloquy, the raven at the door, flaming pits, the moving walls, no equilibrium, no ballast, no bombast, the unvarnished truth we've got, mind swoon, guilty, cooking ravings in a pot. These are the stories of Edgar Allan Poe. Not exactly the boy next door. Telltale heart, a rotting cask, a valley of unrest, or so says Lou Reed. But like, dude, spoilers. Also, nothing is that simple. Even if the name Edgar Allan Poe is legendary, you can't say, let me hip you to that, because why? How could you not have been hipped yet? You can't say, have you heard about Poe? Because even the birds know. Can't even say, if you know, because everyone knows Poe. I had more, but I'm getting dizzy. So I will stop rhyming, you get it. The guy had words. Edgar Allan Poe, born January 19th, 1809 in Boston, so long ago, that street, that house is now gone because you humans love Starbucks. Instead, across the street behind a cigar shop, and in a security company, a convenience store, and yes, a Starbucks, you will find an aggressive statue of a man walking like he just electrocuted himself on the way to work and is trying to walk it off while a giant-ass dinosaur bird is blasting out of his suitcase like it's taking advantage of this guy's post-electrocuted state to escape. The moment is forever sitting, still is sitting, in Edgar Allan Poe Square on the corner of Boylston and Charles Street. And unlike Lou Reed's lyrics, I think that statue about sums it up. Edgar Allan Poe was a moment that can only be correctly memorialized with something so weird it takes a few minutes to understand and a while to explain. Poe's mother was an actress who gifted him a watercolor painting of Boston, which the words, "For my little son Edgar, who should ever love Boston, the place of his birth," and where his mother found her best and most sympathetic friends. And not to get all Dickensian about it, but that one thing you must remember, or nothing that follows will seem wondrous. His father left the family, his mother, the actress, died of tuberculosis. Who didn't? Leaving Edgar to a foster family who gave him the name Edgar Allan Poe, baptized him, and all of this before Poe was 5. Lost his parents, foster family's kind of mean, kind of derpy. Poe is basically a Victorian Harry Potter without the whimsy. Family moves to London, comes back to the US, which was only 46 years old at the time, before Ubers and the TSA pre-check, so things took a bit. Poe goes to the University of Virginia. Calm down, Baltimore, we will get to you, we will get to you. U of Virginia had a revolutionary system developed by Thomas Jefferson. Yes, that Thomas Jefferson. In that the students were supposed to govern themselves and report all shenanigans to the faculty themselves, which I don't know if you've ever been to college, but that's like letting the schnauzers run the vet. But Poe is a handsome and athletic guy with a great voice because his mom was an actor, remember? Who went by the name Henri Le Rene because he was pretty torqued at his foster family. Poe drops out because he had a little gambling issue. Who didn't? Moves to Boston because his mom left him that water painting. Keep up. He starts working at a newspaper, and I don't know if you ever worked for a newspaper, but that does not pay off the gambling debts. So he goes to the army, and he kind of kills it, literally. He would have been a career soldier if it wasn't for the fact that he was just into writing poems. His first book, Timberlane and Other Poems, was published in 1827, but only attributed to a Bostonian, which is weird. Sorry, wicked odd, dude. Because the poems were inspired by the British Lord Byron. And the U.S., particularly in Boston, fought a pretty big war and signed a pretty lengthy contract that they were not about that tea life only 50 years ago at the time. And it's seeming a little bit like maybe we forgot that. Poe is going by the name Edgar Perry at this point because he wasn't super fond of his foster family, and he was poor. Who wasn't? 1829. Poe moves to Baltimore. That's you! I told you we'd get here. He loved you so much that he never left. Is that too dark, too soon? Either way, we're here. He moves in with his aunt, his brother, and his grandmother, and his cousin, Virginia. Yes, that cousin. Yes, it's a little weird. Yes, it was de rigueur to marry a 13-year-old. Yeah, it's still weird. Yeah, it was probably a marriage of inconvenience. Yeah, it's still weird. Think about your cousin. But you know what? I'm hungover, and that's one of the least interesting things about Edgar Allan Poe. They all lived together like the beginning of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but with way more tuberculosis. Poe gets intentionally court-martialed so he can get into writing, but then bam, the Panic of 1837 and the economy craps out. His brother dies from tuberculosis. Who didn't? However, Poe is kind of making a living by writing, which was unheard of at the time, becoming one of the first Americans to do so. That's how good he was. He gets drunk a lot. Who doesn't? Have you met people? He writes a bunch, he moves to Philly, becomes the co-editor at Graham's Magazine, where he will meet his rival, the appropriately named, nailed it, Rufus Wilmot Griswold. And they get into it after Rufus beats Edgar out for a promotion, and they never reconcile. Write that down because it's going to be important later, mostly because I'm going to forget. And then, 1845, Poe drops a poem that he wrote at the Brennan farmhouse on the Upper West Side after agonizing. Yawn, what didn't he agonize over? The length, the province, and the tone of a new work. He starts with length. Quote, "If any literary work is too long to be read in one sitting, we must be content to dispense with the immensely important effect derivable from unity of impression, for if 2 sittings be required, the affairs of the world interfere, and everything like totality is at once destroyed." So at least he knew to do us a favor and keep it short. His figured beauty would make a good province, which meant setting or whatever. I don't know, I wasn't there. But you know who was there? Edgar Allan Poe. And he wrote it all down in this essay called The Philosophy of Composition, which, authors take note, it is super handy to write down while you wrote something, because you get to be as long-winded and pretentious as you like, because like, hey, we asked. Anyway, I read it so you can just drink. In it, Poe talks about how next he needed a tone for the story, and get ready, because it should come as a huge, head-spinning shocker that Edgar Allan Poe decided sadness was going to be the tone. Quote, "The length, the province, and the tone thus being determined, I betook myself to ordinary induction, which the view of obtaining some artistic piquancy, which might serve me as keynote in the construction of the poem." So like I was saying, he did us a favor in keeping it short. Poe goes on to craft a poem, quote, "in octameter acatalectic, alternating with heptameter catalectic, repeated in the refrain of the 5th verse and terminating with tetrameter catalectic, all in trochaic rhythm," his words, not mine. He was very proud that all of that happened in a stanza, which according to Edgar Allan Poe, quote, "never happened before." But he needed a final word that would bring the whole wham bam shang-a-lang together, my words, not his. The refrain, he figured, had to sound like a corollary or a consequence, quote, "that such a close to have force must be sonorous and susceptible of protracted emphasis, admitted no doubt, and these considerations inevitably led me to the long O as the most sonorous vowel, in connection with the R as the most producible consonant. Quoth! In such a search, it would have been absolutely impossible to overlook the word nevermore. In fact, it was the very first which presented itself, unquoth. Deciding on a poem about quoth, a raven, having learned by rote the single word nevermore, and having escaped from in custody of its owner, in driven at midnight through the violence of a storm, to seek admission at a window from which a light still gleams, the chamber window of a student, occupied half poring over a volume, half in dreaming of a beloved mistress deceased. But you know it as The Raven, written 180 years ago. It hits the Evening Mirror and goes viral, which is a little dark considering what's coming. But for right now, Eddie is a rock star. But it was first published under the name Quarles, after the poet Francis Quarles. Why? I don't know. Poe was weird. 1846, he moves to the Bronx. In 1847, his cousin wife, Virginia, dies of what? tuberculosis, and you wonder why he drinks. Poe goes to Richmond, not doing great. Who would be? And in 1849, he disappears. He is found October 3rd, semi-conscious in Baltimore, which is my favorite Lou Reed album. Quote, in great distress and in need of immediate assistance, which everyone here in 2025 needs on a t-shirt. According to Joseph W. Walker, he'd known he was the guy because he found him. Poe gets stationed to Washington Medical College, incoherent, yelling the name Reynolds. And at 5 a.m. on October 7th, his last words were, "Lord help my poor soul." At least that's according to the attending physician. But all records of Poe's death were lost, including his death certificate. So no one knows why, how, what, and about how Poe died, which means Edgar Allan Poe, the guy who wrote about madness, murder, death, and mysteries, died screaming mad and mysteriously. And some people just look like they're pets. 177 years ago today, Edgar Allan Poe is sick. Tomorrow morning he will be gone. Why am I telling you this? Because after Poe's death, his one mistake in the history of his life, fighting poverty, alcoholism, lead, whatever, it's the 1800s, you're lucky if you don't drop dead from a paper cut, he did not outlive his rival. Rufus Wilmot Griswold immediately wrote a slanted, high-profile obituary under the name Ludwig. What is up with you guys changing your names back then? Your own names were awesome enough. Why make it harder? And he called Poe a creep who, quote, walked the streets in madness or melancholy, with lips moving in indistinct curses, or with eyes upturned in passionate prayers, never for himself, for he felt or professed to feel that he was already damned. Who, quote, died in Baltimore the day before yesterday. This announcement will startle many, but few will be grieved by it. And then, just to punt Poe's ghost right in the doink, he writes a full-on biography about Poe, quote, Memoir of the Author, that describes Poe as a frail, drug-addicted drunk, a creepy psycho, a weirdo jerk. And that is why most humans think of Poe as a frail, drunk, drug-addicted weirdo that wrote creepy stories, and not the handsome, fit, street-fighting rock star poet who was basically Mr. Darcy with an edge. And that is why you let your critics die before you. Hark, lo! True, nervous, very dreadfully nervous. I have been and am, because it is nice out, and who does not want wings when you're drunk? But relax. I am weird too. I am special. From childhood to hour, I have not been as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I cannot bring my passions from a common spring. Our talk has been serious and sober, but our thoughts, they are palsied and seared. Our memories are treacherous and seared. For we knew not the month was October, and we marked not the night of the year. Hear loud the alarm bells, brazen bells. What terror of terror tells? Now their turbulency tells, I must scream or die. Tear up the planks. Here, here. It is the beating of his hideous heart. Sorry, spoilers, I got excited. And if you didn't know all those, then you don't know Edgar Allan Poe. And I ask you, how could you not know Poe? Because Poe knew you humans, and this is why we honor him. But it is not just for the horrors, the madness, the ghosts, and the voices, and the talking birds. It's because of the murder. Stay with me, I know it's dreary and we are weary. Philadelphia, 1840, when your country was only 64 years old. Thomas Jefferson had only died 14 years ago. Poe was in school when Thomas Jefferson was alive. For the wild yet homely narrative I'm about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief, because facts do not require your beliefs. They just are, and I am not mad, and I surely do not dream, you dig? American publisher George Rex Graham established Graham's Magazine, which came around because Burton's Gentleman Magazine merged with Atkins' Casket. That's like if the New Yorker merged with Cosmo and Playboy, but just the articles. And they were the go-to for news, reviews, music, and fashion, and this new craze hitting the streets and scaring the parents, short stories. Graham's Magazine also paid super well, which was wild for a magazine back in the day to pay well for creativity. So of course it attracted some solid talent, including William Cullen Bryant, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and James Fenimore Cooper. And then Graham hired Edgar Allan Poe, who was in Philadelphia at the time, as an editor because, quote, Mr. Poe is too well known in the literary world to require a world of commendation, meaning he's too good to say he's good. That's how good he is, because that guy got it. Anyway, whilst there, Edgar Allan Poe writes a tale of something called ratiocination, which means the process of exact thinking, applied to something that was on everyone's mind because cities were expanding, crime! At the time, remember, we went way back, America was investing in science to solve crimes and reporting on it, but the word detective had not yet been coined. That's how far back we're going. Poe figured, why not come at it like the way people play cards? Quote, the extent of information obtained lies not so much in the validity of the interference as in the quality of the observation. And yeah, we said no math, but math was around, and you can't run from math. It'll find you. He creates the character C. August Dupin to apply some creative thinking into getting into the mind of the criminal. And yeah, that's kind of cheating. You don't win an argument if you're just arguing with yourself, Aaron Sorkin, but it is fun to read. As he attempts to solve a murder, the short story, How, is called Murders in the Rue Trianon. Rue meaning road, and Trianon is a fancy villa. But Poe went harder, knowing how you humans think, and wanted you to think more about murder. So instead he changes it to the Murders in the Rue Morgue. And that's a title you can chew on. Getting into your newfound interest in crime, which is hilarious today, because like, if any one of you humans so much as politely nods in my direction, I'm gonna start a true crime podcast in your face. I'll be like, it was Saturday, October 5th. I was on my way home across the street. This guy's walking a schnauzer. He's smiling at me, but I know it meant something more. My name is Chad, and this is that jerk who killed me. And to solve that crime with clever insight and method, and bam, do you feel that? Edgar Allan Poe just created the detective novel. Don't forget, you didn't have that word detective yet. It just sounded like you couldn't pronounce the thing you were pointing at. You're gonna get it, you're all. And sure, crime happened. That's how you do humans. If you can do a thing, eventually you will. And of course you're curious, but it never had you been so into it as you were in 1840. It inspired Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to create that one guy that got stoned and was real good at math, whatever his name was. Plus every detective novel you've ever heard, since it was the first time you've ever done that. So just know, without Edgar Allan Poe, you would not have Poirot, Miss Marple, Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, Sam Spade, Basil Baker Street, Alex Cross, Benoit Blanc, Gil Grissom, Olivia Benson, Temperance Brennan, Sean Spencer, Veronica Mars, Jessica Jones, Batman, Clouseau, Columbo, Monk, House, Benedict Cumberbatch, and most importantly, Wishbone, the greatest of them all, because he can smell crime. Poe knew the fears that were on your mind when he wrote "'Twas Murder." He would eventually write, "We have him to thank for Jessica Fletcher." And that's all you needed, was to thank you. And you too could figure out the crime, which raised an entire generation of cottagecore, cozy, cultured sleuths. And now we have the internet and Billy Jensen. If you don't know, Google it. All because Poe knows humans. After Rue Morgue, it's Marie Roget, 1842, which is based on an actual murder of Mary Cecilia Rogers from, presumably, Lyme, Connecticut, which, by the way, is where you get the name for Lyme's disease. I know that was a sidebar, but it's a disease, and Poe loves that stuff. Plus, you got trivia answers for days. You're welcome. And though fictionalizing crime was all the rage, this was the first time took a real crime and turned it into a detective story. Quote, under the pretense of showing Dupin unraveling mysteries of Marie's assassination, I, in fact, enter in to the very rigorous analysis of the real tragedy in New York. And though it wasn't as well received as Rue Morgue, Rufus Wilmot Griswold thought it was a damn fine example of Poe's cunning intellect. And to have a rival with a name like a villain in his own story be your actual rival and dig your work, well, we should all be so lucky. After that, Poe writes the Purloined Letter, 1844, which Poe considers the best of his ratiocination stories. And so good was it that the editor considered it, quote, one of the best of his ratiocination stories, adeptest illustrations, which could and well be conceived of that curious play of two minds in one person. They even adapted it into an episode of Wishbone called the Purloined Letter. 1844, man, that was the day. And all this time, Poe was leading you along, literally, because these stories also introduced the idea of the narrator following the detective along for the journey, making Poe that guy that kind of got the idea for Watson, which is you, humans. You are Watson. Poe knew you couldn't and didn't want to solve the crime. That's dangerous. Plus, it's getting your hands dirty and you just showered. You didn't have the time to figure this out, but you're fascinated by them that do. And way back when, in 1840s of old, Poe knew you would love it, and you still do. You got an evening to kill? Time to solve a murder. Got a commute that'll kill you? Get on the next episode and find the killer. Is it raining? Screw work. Let's solve a mystery. All without getting your hands dirty. Jump in the sidecar. Let the detective ratiocinate your way through the dreary streets. Because whose isn't a little weak and weary these days? Time to nod, nearly napping, while you ponder over some volumes of forgotten lore, smoking a pipe and staying safe in our Sherlock Holmes. And in the end, So good was he creating these mysteries that his own death became one. Like he himself written his own story for someone to solve, and that someone is you. So get out there, humans, into the misty streets, because you know Poe. And even though he wrote about madness, horrors, ghosts, and things you humans do when you're guilty and nervous and caffeinated, so tired you accidentally dig up your dead cousin because you dug her dental work, Poe knows it is only left for us to prove that these apparent impossibilities are in reality not such. And that, humans, is why we honor Edgar Allan Poe today. Thank you so much, Baltimore! And I hope you're getting psyched, because I'm excited to announce him. He's got a new album coming out on Halloween. He's been rapping about Poe for 20 years. You can find him on YouTube. Give it up for my hero and yours, MC Lars!
Check, check. Give it up for Chad the bird. That bird is awesome. I learned a lot today, Chad. You're very well informed. That was tight. It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea that a maid there lived whom you may know by the name of Annabelle Lee. And this maid, she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. But the angels got jealous and they stole my queen. Now she's gone and I can barely see. But her mortality makes her hot, all up in the mosh of my favorite spot. I got so lost in the bright green eyes, so tell me why the love of my life had to die. So who's that, rapping at my door? Annabelle Lee, R.I.P. like a Nor, Nevermore. Should have known the death would take a red lipstick kiss. And I'm lonely now. It was tuberculosis, necrosis. I can't focus, and I hope this pain goes away, cause all I see is her photos on the walls, full of perfume on the sheets. We were so in love, even when she's gone. I'll be up in the graveyard singing her songs like Cemetery Woman, the Cemetery Girl, Cemetery Lady, I want you, my world. I sampled Poe's favorite band, Tegan and Sarah. He would have loved them. You might recognize this part. I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than love, see. I am Annabelle Lee. With the love of the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. She was gone by dawn, should have known all along that we were never meant to be. Sadly, I gave her my heart, she gave me her flower, like Romeo and Juliet chilling in the tower. Every single day, every single hour, Rumpy in the bedroom, Pumpy in the shower. So now I take a shovel and I dag real deep, taking her to rip out all her teeth, put them in a box so she'll always be. Let's see, probably needs some therapy. The highborn kids stole it from me, chilling and killing my Annabelle Lee. That's death, I guess, there's nothing I can do. Like Ronnie and Sammy, our relationship is through. And so every night, side of my darling, my wife and my bride, my life and my pride. Now all I have left is poetry, memory, sorrow, and stress. All these condos are getting a free show today. Good investment, Baltimoreans. Alright, this part's verbatim from Poe. Check out his flow. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. And the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. And neither the angels in heaven above or the demons down under the sea can never dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. We love with a love that was stronger than love of those who were older than we. They said we were kids, but I know what love is. We were happy and young and so free. And so every night I lay down by the side of my darling, my wife and my bride. That's where she will always be, in her tomb by the sounding sea. Thank you, Baltimore.
True. Nervous. Very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heavens and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad, eh? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad, huh? Madmen know nothing. You should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. With what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, that no light shone out. And then I thrust in my head slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed. And so, it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone and inquiring, how has he passed the night? So you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was black as pitch with the thick darkness, for the shutters were close-fastened through fear of robbers. And so I knew he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on, steadily, steadily. had my head in and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening and the old man sprang up in the bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour, I did not move a muscle. And in the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the walls. Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh no, this was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew he'd been lying awake ever since that first slight noise when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He'd been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He'd been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor, or it is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he'd been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but had found all in vain. All in vain. Because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. After I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a little, very, very little crevice in the lantern. And so I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until, at length, a simple dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot from out the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with a perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, much as a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? that I'm nervous. So I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. But even yet I refrained and kept still. But the beating grew louder, louder. I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leapt into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the walls. At length, it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart. I held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe to you the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head, and the arms, and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I'd been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. Ha ha! When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock. Still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I now to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man, I mentioned, was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search. Search well. I led them, at length, to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached and I fancied this ringing in my ears. But still they sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definitiveness until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale, but talked more quickly and with a heightened voice. And yet the sound increased. And what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such the sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men. But the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore, I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards. But the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, louder, louder. And still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no. No, they heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again, hark! Louder, 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 louder! Villains! I shrieked. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here. It is the beating of his hideous heart.
Of the fog in the damp
Great to be here today at the Poe Museum. It's really quite a scene. And now will we scream for the Gallagher's Frolics jig?
On this fine autumn day, I will raise up a beer and I'll raise up a cheer for Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Yes, here's to brewers yeast, that humblest of all beasts, producing carbon gas, producing acetaldehyde. But my friends, that isn't all. It makes ethyl alcohol. That is what the yeast excretes, and that's what we imbibe. Oh, anaerobic isolation, alcoholic fermentation, NADH oxidation. Bring me a beer. I-di-dilly-I-diddly-day, I-di-dilly-I-day, yo, I-di-dilly-I-diddly-day, alcohol. I-di-dilly-I-diddly-day, I-di-dilly-I-day, yo, I-di-dilly-I-diddly-day, alcohol. My intestinal wall absorbs that ethanol, and soon it crosses through my blood-brain barrier. There's a girl in the next seat whom I didn't think that sweet, but after a few drinks, I want to marry her. I guess it's not surprising that my dopamine is rising and my glutamate receptors are all shot. And I'd surely be bemoaning all that extra serotonin serotonin, but my judgment is impaired and my confidence is not. Allosteric modulation, no long-term potentiation, hastens my inebriation. Bring me a beer. I die dilly I diddle I day, I die dilly I day, yo, I die dilly I diddle I day. Alcohol. I die dilly I diddle I day, I die dilly I day, yo, I die dilly I diddle I day. Alcohol. When that ethanol is in me, some shows up in my kidneys and inhibits vasopressin by degrees. A decrease in aquaporin hinders water's reabsorption, and pretty soon I really have to pee. Oh, my liver breaks it down so my body can rebound. But my store of glycogen is soon depleted. And tomorrow when I'm sober, I'll also be hungover, 'cause I flushed electrolytes that my nerves and muscles needed. Diuretic activation, urination, dehydration. Bring me a beer. I die dilly I diddle I day, I die dilly I day, yo, I die dilly I diddle I day. Alcohol. I die dilly I diddle I day, I die dilly I day, yo, I die dilly I diddle I day. Alcohol. I die dilly I diddle I day, I die dilly I day, yo, I die dilly I diddle I day. Alcohol!
Nevermore. Prophet said I, king of evil, a prophet's evil, crag or devil, with a 10%, or with a patent his horse to be here ashore, and desolate, yet all undaunted, and his desert land enchanted, and his home by horror haunted. Tell me, truly I implore, is there, wow, in Gilead? Tell me, I implore, quoth the raven. Nevermore. Prophet said I, king of evil, and prophet still cried or devil, and I, that bend of others, by the godly both adore, and tell me soul with sorrow laden, if, within the distant Aden, it shall at last a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, at last, a venerated maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. He had word, a sign of hardening, a word of pain, a sign of starting, and yet he had resurrected, and the eggs was on his floor. An evil black bloom, and a token of the lie thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bus above my door. Take thy beat from out of my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, no! And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pilot bus of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming. And the lamplight o'er is streaming and throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul, from out of that shadow that lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted. Nevermore.
Now I'm on my way to you.